Hey guys, today I wanted to make this video talking about program design over the long term for specifically hypertrophy. So the process of getting more jacked, primarily for somebody who is mostly concerned with aesthetics and the whole maximizing muscle gain and not as much strength gain. So that's basically what the scope is going to be of this video. Just because I get some questions about it, and I think that if more people adopted more of a scientific approach to how they programmed, how they trained long term, they'd have better results and not be able to, have as much problems with spinning wheels and burning out and stuff like that. So anyways, I wanted to first say a few important terms I will use. So first off, macrocycle. So a macrocycle is going to be basically months of training. Usually it's going to be several mesocycles, which are going to be otherwise referred to as training blocks, which consist of accumulation weeks, which are referred to as microcycles, including the deloads. So just before I go into the specifics, those are some really important ground rules to just establish. So I have my little whiteboard right here. I'm just going to be referring to it throughout this video and just kind of walking you guys through what exactly it is that this is all meaning and how you can apply it. So I'm going to I refer to my mesocycle, my macrocycle designs in periods of 4 mesocycles, just as this general framework, and I'm going to explain what everything on this basically means as simply as I possibly can. So first off, the first mesocycle is going to be the quote-unquote lowest volume of all of the mesocycles. So the whole goal with having, and the whole point of having a macrocycle design is to avoid adaptive resistance and that resistance to hypertrophy, because as we get something called the repeated bout effect, which is basically the more that you do something, the more efficient your body becomes at handling it, and then becomes more efficient at adapting to it. And so you can have some of that adaptive resistance to getting bigger and stronger, in particular getting bigger in this scope. So it's really, really important to have a long-term plan so then you can actually see long-term progress. So the whole goal as we do go throughout these for the mesocycles 1 through 3, it's going to be accumulating volume. And mesocycle 1, I like to have 7 to 10 reps for the first mesocycle, with this phase being the relative quote-unquote lowest volume mesocycle of all of the phases. So you might not push, you might probably stay more around your minimum effective volumes / like the minimum / like the lower threshold of your maximum adaptive volumes / be kind of more around the 7 to 8 rep range in this first mesocycle of training. And then with your second mesocycle, you would want to go into a slightly higher rep range, so going into anywhere between 7 to 12 rep ranges, with more of an emphasis on getting a little bit higher reps than you did last mesocycle. So for example, just for hypotheticals, let's say if I was averaging more around the 7 for the first mesocycle, let's say in mesocycle 2, I try to get most of my sets with that 10 reps. What that's going to do is have a little bit of a novel stimulus, be able to let you progress a little bit better. You'll be able to have more volumes than you did last mesocycle, be able to still be making progress. Between the first and second mesocycle, you will also incorporate different exercise selection, just to have some variation. And then for the third mesocycle, is going to be within that 8 to 15 rep range. And then in this one, you also want to incorporate some metabolite techniques. So this will be the highest volume of all of the phases. And then you want to incorporate some metabolite techniques. So what do I mean by metabolite techniques? Metabolite techniques are going to be stuff like drop sets, giant sets, marathon sets, supersets, basically to get that local burn in the muscle, to get the accumulation of ions nitric oxide, endothelial factors in your vasculature, to really help you get all of that to help you get as most hypertrophy as you possibly can. Because up until this point, because you've had 2 mesocycles of training with, you know, using the bread and butter, if you do have a little bit, if you sprinkle this on top, you're also going to get a little bit of better progress. Again, I would change up exercises in this mesocycle. Generally, to have, because you will be incorporating metabolite techniques, a little bit more machine work is going to be used into the 3rd one, just because machines kind of lend themselves a little bit better to this style of training / single joint movements. It's not a very smart idea to do like drop sets on squat, because when you can generally use more weight on that. If you have more load on your body, more mechanical stress and tension, you're going to have a more, and once that fatigue does kick in, because that's the whole point of metabolite techniques, is to get that local fatigue of the musculature as high as you possibly can. We know that with fatigue, there's more technique breakdown. There's a lot less issues with having that technique breakdown on like a bicep curl as opposed to a squat. So that's just the basic reasoning why you want to use more of machine work, single joint work on your metabolite technique. So for the sake of example, supersetting dumbbell flies with push-ups, supersetting bicep curls with you know, tricep pushdowns, for a drop sets, you know, drop 10% on each drop set. So have your first set have a certain target rep range, and then just drop down 10% and then do as many as you possibly can, being that week's proximity to failure. And then for the 4th mesocycle, so this is actually going to be a resensitization phase. So basically, you would drop all the way down to doing 4 to 6 reps per set, and do more strength work and lower volumes. So basically, be around ME, like minimum effective volume, / low end of maximum adaptive volumes, that we're on minimum effective volumes. This could also just be like a strength block, because so the goal of this phase is not to actually build muscle, it's to resensitize yourself to the higher volume stimulus. We know that strength will be pretty much, as long as it is within, you know, this rep range, 4 to 6 reps, 70 to 85% of your 1 rep max will be sufficiently taxing of the local musculature, so that you can actually have maintenance of muscle as well. But the whole point of this is to then potentiate yourself to have even better progress once you go back through this whole macrocycle design, so then you can keep making that steady progress with hypertrophy. Because remember, we are adaptive beings. We are very, very, very good at it, and we want to constantly be stressing our bodies, making them adapt and making them get bigger and stronger. So this phase, you know, I would definitely, like, lots of people do not take these phases, but they are extremely, extremely important. I can pretty much guarantee you that anybody who has done extended hypertrophy training, especially, they kind of will notice it gets really hard to get a pump. You're not really, it just like, it doesn't really feel like you're doing much. It kind of starts to feel mundane. This helps you have a little bit of, it will not only resensitize yourself to higher volumes, you will also be able to take advantage of phase potentiation and actually get pretty strong during this phase. Take advantage of the muscle growth, and then, you know, you'll be resensitized to higher volumes again once you go back into hypertrophy rep ranges, work through your volume landmarks and whatnot. So hope that this video was helpful. This is about, like, I try to make this as simple as possible. Obviously, individualization plays a huge factor in this. Listener's experience, etc. But just remember, having a long-term plan is absolutely key. So if you don't have a long-term plan, you know, the biggest thing that kills your gains, besides like not lifting and getting hurt and you know, dying, is indecisiveness and not having a long-term plan. So if you have a long-term plan, if you have a long-term goal in mind, you'll be much more likely to see very, very calculated results, because we are input output machines. And if you do program correctly, you can engineer your body for specific outcomes. You just need to know what you're doing. So I hope this was insightful to some of you. If any of you guys do want coaching, custom programming, or incorporate these principles, you can kind of learn from me and kind of see how to incorporate it properly into your training plan. You know, links down below. Follow me on Instagram. Hope that you guys liked the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.